Next up, we have Giri. He's a developer advocate at Solace, and he's here. Can you hear me, Giri?
Yeah, I can. Hi, Simon. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect. Thank you. And he's here to talk a little bit about event API products and maximizing the value of your event-driven architecture.
Right.
So I'll hand it right over to you, and we'll get started.
All right. Thanks, Simon. Hey, guys. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining from. Welcome to Apidays HongKong. My topic for my session today is event API products. Maximizing the value of your event-driven architecture. Um, I am Giri Venkatesan. I'm a developer advocate with Solace. I enjoy creating awareness around everything EDA and EDI, and of course, all things tech. Passionate about integration and data management, so it feels like I'm at the right place. Um, I'm part of Solace. Solace is a pioneer in EDA. You know, we help enterprises in the EDA journey with a real-time, low-latency, high-performance event streaming platform and event portal. Right, a lot's been happening around this event-driven architecture. So if you can take some time and join the community, you can participate in expert conversation. Here's the URL, and there's a swag for you if you sign in next 24 hours. So with that said, let's get started. So are you hearing these terms, some of these terms like events, event mesh, PubSub, async API, and so on in your conversation within the organization with your colleagues or customers or partners? Don't be surprised. These are regular part of conversation lately, right? The key question is, how are you responding to them, right? In this session, we'll set the stage by introducing these concepts like event APIs and how do we manage these event APIs as a product, right? So let's get started with that one. So the agenda is going to be like, we'll set the stage talking about events, comparing it with the APIs, and then laying out the new concepts like event-driven APIs, event API products, and finally, the most important piece, event management portal. This could be a typical EDA journey if you are implementing any digital transformation projects, right? Events are everywhere, right? In this digital era that we live in, every touch point that we come across, be it a business centric or a personal mobile phone app and so on, everything produces truckload of events. Customer feedback, inventory update, all those things generate truckload of events. But the key question is, what are we doing with them, right? Um, just like how you say there is a value to data, there is a business value, there is a time value to data. This graph is from Gartner. The time value is nothing but how soon you make the data available to the applications in order to make time-critical decisions. In a nutshell, to unlock the value of data, you need to set the data in motion as an event stream, right? That's a key point takeaway. Now that we know what event is and kind of lay out what we are planning to do with that, let's see how it compares with something that we're all familiar with, APIs, right? APIs define how the systems interact, right? With a defined semantics and a behavior to model the information exchange effectively. Usually they're not visible and offers no UI. Well said, right? When it comes to events, an event is a change of the application state that has already happened. Basically a snapshot at a point in time of your application or a system, right? Events are immutable and cannot be undone. Just like how you say history cannot be changed, right? The past cannot change. Events don't have a known destination. This is a very important piece of information. We'll dig into it a little bit more later. Now, if you take in a bit more closely at a technical perspective, right? Enables a synchronous communication, enabling pull-based interaction using request reply as the message exchange pattern, right? That's very clear. And it relies on standard protocols that we're all familiar with, HTTP, GraphQL, gRPC, and so on. And the last point about mediation, is there anybody sitting in the middle between this API requester and API provider? The answer is no. It's a direct communication. When it comes to events, it's just the other side of things, right? It enables asynchronous communication, offers a push-based interaction between the participants using publish, subscribe as the key message exchange pattern, right? And here, a lot of real-time friendly protocols like AMQP, MQTT, and so on are put to best use. Coming to the mediation point, it is 100% mediated by a central component called as broker. So that's why we have this notion of publisher publishing to a broker and subscriber receiving the events from a broker and so on. Okay, this is all looking good, but this is nothing new. From the 90s, we have seen this field, what we refer to as integration, evolving from the traditional old AJBs to web services SOA, and lately with the advent and advancements of microservices and APIs, we have a huge ecosystem that's pretty much, everything what we have today is built around these APIs, right? Then came the events and event streaming, and now we are talking about event APIs. So what are we doing here, right? What we want to do is, how do we better the customer experience, making it real time? How do you build systems that are more agile and robust, right? That's where this whole real-time notion, asynchronous communication, events, event APIs plays a major part in this whole game, right? So the key thing that I want to call out is how the API has evolved as an ecosystem with API products, API management portal, and so on. An event-driven world also requires something similar. But before we go there, let's kind of examine the API product, right? API product is nothing but a bundle of related APIs, right? So in your organization, I'm sure as an API expert, you would agree, you want to treat the APIs as a bundle so that it becomes manageable, shareable, and reusable, right? And using some open standards, it becomes even more easier. The developer portal is the key piece here, right? From where you can kind of manage the entire ecosystem with all the facilities like monitoring, analytics, and so on with ease. It's more developer friendly. With these kind of advancements, we kind of sophisticated ourselves into these design approaches like API only applications, API first applications, and of course, API marketplaces. The last but not least, we are at a stage where we can design new APIs just by composing existing APIs. These are all great advancements in the APIs, right? So the goal is, how do we have similar things from an event-driven perspective? We know what API offers, and we know what it is doing today, and we know what events can do to the ecosystem, bringing in the real-time nature to the game. So what we're going to create something called as event-driven API. That's the stage setting for this whole notion of event API product. Okay. Now, REST APIs and event-driven APIs, even though they kind of sound different, look different, but they don't need to be competing with each other. They can complement each other, right? Any solution that you build, you may be able to mix and match these REST and event-driven APIs to get the best effort. The reality is, every single application that we see today might be engaging this already. For example, let's take a order processing system, right, which is pretty fundamental in any e-commerce application. Customer places an order, he gets a confirmation immediately. Everybody's happy, right? But behind the scene, there's a lot more happening, right? Between the time when you get a confirmation of your order and then the point in time whether you get the product delivered or maybe an email notification saying that it failed, anything can happen. The customer is completely in the dark, not knowing what's exactly happening. But things are changing, right? So whatever is happening behind the enterprise, that could be an event-driven system. An event could have been published to a broker saying that order has been placed, which in turn can be published to other enterprise applications within your ecosystem like inventory, shipping, CRM, and so on, which can continue to consume, process, and then provide updates. These updates can in turn be turned around and shared with the customer as status updates. So everybody's happy. Now we are seeing a real-time interactive process orchestration, right? Combining both REST APIs and event APIs. Now, it doesn't have to just stop there, integrating internal application. There could be external applications or stakeholders like market research, feedback management. They could also be consuming these events. So what we're saying is event-driven API need not be focused on internal, within applications within your enterprise. It can also be extended for consumption to external applications. We'll see how it can be done, right? So if you look at the REST architecture, right, it evolved with these two pieces, runtime and design time components, right? Runtime is a pretty straightforward API gateway facilitating communication between the clients and providers, whereas the design time is all about how do you design your API, the underlying schema, and then the permissioning of the application and adapting to standards so that you get everything in one place. What are those things? Ability to catalog the APIs, discover the APIs, share and reuse, and generate code if possible. This is great. This is well done, and it's already existing. What happens to the event-driven architecture? We have a wonderful runtime component, what we call as the event broker, that's already taking care of enabling communication between publishers and subscribers in the form of events and services. But what about the design time? That's the missing piece here. What do we want to have this design time do for us, right? Ability to create events, schemas, application, and so on, so that we have similar capabilities of what API portal offers to the REST world, right? With that said, managing this event-driven API is very different. Gartner put out this nice statement. The existing REST API portal cannot be used as is because the fundamental mechanism how the event-driven API operates is a push-based mechanism, right? So the architects and the developers must create new approaches to mediate and govern these event-driven APIs. So that's a well-led statement, but how do we get there, right? As we started, your enterprise and the real world that we live in is full of events. Are all events of equal importance? The answer is no. So the first thing what we do is in our system, let's identify the events, what we can call as a system event. It could be a simple log data to account sign up to user authentication to the process specific things like order received, order process, and so on. Everything is an event. That's great. But let's call out those high value events or events of importance, like order specific events and inventory specific events and so on. And why do we have to stop there? Just like how we created API product by bundling related APIs, let's create event API by bundling events from your enterprise ecosystem and creating them as a bundle and then attempting to manage from a developer portal. That's where your ability to adapt to open standards like async API, different support for protocols, and documenting all these things will become quite feasible, right? So as you identify these system events and elevate them to create this event API product, the value and exposure also increases. I'm sure the picture kind of hints at it very clearly. It's not difficult. There are 5 steps we need to follow through to create an event API product. First one is discover the system events that exist in your enterprise and assess them based on their usability and value. And last but not least, bundle them. Very important, right? You cannot deal with individual event, right? Rather, deal with them as a bundled event API. Now, document these high-value events so that it becomes shareable and reusable. And the final step is how do you make it exposed, as in so that the consumer application can consume these events, event APIs. Exposed to the consumer application, basically release your event API product, and nothing is ever done, right? So you always continue to iterate through, evolve it, and optimize it, and so on. So you need the scope for managing these things in one place. So all these things need to be done at a real time, at a high speed, so that your enterprise becomes agile, right? So we know the missing piece now. What we need is what we call as an event portal that can do similar things what API portal did for the APIs. With this event portal, you will be able to create events, design schemas, and permission applications in terms of who can subscribe to what event, who can publish what event, and so on. So you basically bring out the capabilities of the API developer portal into the event-driven world, right? Sounds good? So obviously, this entire process is not an overnight thing. You will start out by building this EDA for a small division and then slowly expand across the organization. So the tendency is to kind of manage these things on your own, do it yourself kind of approach, programmatically, or maybe a simple tool that's written in-house and so on, right? But the value of such a tool diminishes as the scale increases. When I say scale, meaning the number of users consuming these event APIs or the number of applications that are participating in this whole game, right? That will diminish the value, cannot scale. What you need is a professional perspective towards this event management. Let's acknowledge that we need an event management discipline to scale. So with that, you can unlock this increasing value by making these events accessible and usable across your organization. And if needed, you can even expose to the external parties interested in that. All right. So Solace is basically in the EDA domain. Solace PubSub Plus platform offers both the streaming and the management platform. I'm just focusing on this event management component here. In that, you have an event streaming, which is a broker, and an event portal. Using this event portal in a single place, you'll be able to design, create, catalog, visualize, share, and go on all the events within your ecosystem. The key thing to notice, we are talking about discovering events, right? It is not necessary that you would have only Solace broker in your ecosystem, or maybe only Kafka broker in your ecosystem. It could be RabbitMQ, it could be Amazon Kinesis, right? So irrespective of underlying event broker, this portal provides you a facility to discover events that exist in your system. This comes in very handy in terms of knowing the most used event, or least used event, and so on. So we'll just look into that in the next picture. So when it comes to creation, the good old days where you used to hand code everything, let's retire that. We should be able to do everything visually and then see the relationship between application in terms of publish, subscribe, and the event context in a visual fashion. That is possible in this tool. And ability to discover runtime events. As I said, right? So you may have thousands of events, but which one is the most important one? And which one has how many versions? So a change in version would impact what kind of event? All those details, we need to be able to capture that. So to start with, we need the ability to discover runtime events in your ecosystem. And once it's done, now we have the ability to see them as a catalog in one place, right? Now you have the reference to the relationship, like, which event uses what schema, rather how many events are relying on this schema, how many applications are operating on this event and the topic, and how many events are operating on this event mesh, the runtime component, right? So in a single place, you would be able to get a full perspective of all your events. I mean, I'm hoping that we are talking about high value events at this stage, right? And last but not least, EDA typically tend to be perceived as a black box. It doesn't have to be. It is a black box only when you know what is there, what is not there, and only when you know that how they are related and what kind of impact will be there when you make a change and so on. All those things can be brought out nicely with the use of event management tools, right? So the dependencies, if you were to make a change to this particular topic, what are the applications that's going to be affected? If you were to make a change to a particular schema, what are the events that will be affected and so on, right? So this visual kind of interpretation slash extrapolation of all these dependencies is going to make a difference in terms of speed is the key here, right? So last but not least, you need to expose them. Just like how you have OpenAPI as a standard for REST architecture, you can create a document and then hand it to the developers and they can start building applications to consume these APIs. Similarly, we have the ability to export these event API products to a standard, which is async API, pretty much adopted by all the EDA vendors lately. And these async API documents kind of captures all the details, not just the design time about the schema definition, permissions, and so on, but also the runtime, the security scope, the broker type, and so on, right? So this document can be again shared through a link or maybe a file, whatever it is. Now it is available for consumption, right? So how is it looking now? The last piece is about code generation. Obviously, async API specifically, it's not just a standard for documenting event-driven APIs. It is also a tool set to generate code. As in, given an async API document of your event-driven application interface, you would be able to generate code for numerous languages as well as frameworks like Spring and so on. So from the design to code gen, an event portal should be able to help you through every step. And with that said, are we there yet? Yes, we are. Solace PubSub Plus portal helps you to build event API products, visualize your EDA, and of course, analyze and improvise on things, manage the underlying messaging needed to execute these APIs, basically your runtime, all in one place, right? So my goal was to introduce you to the event API product as a concept and draw parallel between the REST world, which we're all familiar with, the APIs and the API portals, and how they can collaborate with each other to solve bigger and complex and interesting problems. That's what I want to share, and I hope it helps. Thanks, Simon.
Thank you very much for your fascinating sharing. I would like to ask a few questions. I hope that's okay.
Sure.
You talked a lot about, moving towards event-driven APIs, and I want to ask: is there a place, in your opinion, for these traditional REST APIs, or do you believe that for pretty much most use cases you should move towards event-driven APIs?
Very good question. Let me start out with this. Not at all. Event-driven APIs and REST APIs, they complement each other. It is not about competition or displacement. There are things that are well done when you use REST API because we need synchronicity. We cannot move away from that, right? Where you can kind of asynchronously scale or distribute your load or whatever form it is, event-driven API comes in handy, right? So it tend to be mostly, within the organization, I am having some change data. Why should I keep it myself, or why should I have a bunch of APIs sitting to know about it? Let me publish it. So it's a natural candidate for internal architecture. But it is always a combination of REST API and event-driven API makes a beautiful real-time solution. Hope it answered the question.
Yeah. Perfect. To kind of follow up more on that, speaking as someone who maybe works mainly with traditional REST API stuff and who is not too familiar with pub/sub or event-driven APIs, how would you recommend someone like me or maybe a beginner to this to get started and to try out more event-driven APIs?
Sure. Me coming from Solace, I would say, Solace has put out a tremendous amount of material to bring about this EDA knowledge, right? Of course, Solace is not alone. There's Kafka, Apache Kafka, Amazon Kinesis. There's a lot of players. There's a lot of public materials, right? So to start with, I would say get started with the event and event-driven architecture foundation and these notions of publish, subscribe. I mean, that's about it. After you cross that point, how the journey became easy for you to move with the REST API all the way to the API portal, right? Event-driven API follows the same path. There is less complexity in learning, more complexity in designing the solution. So getting on board is pretty straightforward. There's a lot of material. And of course, please join our community. We have lots and lots of experts exchange. Our product being supporting multiple protocols and multiple languages, right? The kind of questions that we deal with, the kind of solutions that we need to kind of recommend, it's eye-opening. There's a lot of interesting discussion. That could be a great place to start.
Thank you. Finally, I would like to ask, as someone who can be considered an expert in this field, I want to ask, what is the biggest misconception that people might have about event-driven APIs versus traditional APIs or anything in this field, or maybe a common mistake that people make when designing the system?
I mean, there's a plenty. There's a bunch of blogs that have been written about this myths about EDA. Or you cannot, you can do only asynchronous in EDA. Starting from that point, all the way to everything should be event-driven if you want to adopt to EDA, right? No, these are all myths. There's a lot of things that's been written about. For me, the most important piece is coexistence of this REST API and event-driven API. That we cannot move away from that, right? So can they be unified? Possible. I don't know what the future holds. But as of now, the event management stands alone simply because it's fundamentally different from the API management, push versus pull, and the underlying protocol differences and so on, right? So eventually, there may be a chance that we might see them collaborating, managed through a single interface. For me, they complement each other. They will continue to coexist, and greater solutions can come about if you use them in the right manner. Yeah, it's a right tool for the right job at this point in time.
Yeah, I want to thank you very much for your sharing and for your time and for your answers.